1588, Elizabeth's navy defeated the Spanish Armada in the greatest English victory since Agincourt.
The celebrations were long and magnificent. The procession to the Thanksgiving service at St. Paul's Cathedral was the grandest since Elizabeth's coronation. The captured Spanish banners were hung up as trophies, and a commemorative medal was struck with the inscription, "God's winds blew and they were scattered." And the English really thought that God had fought on their side. They were the new chosen race, God's own Protestant people. England stood proud, and Elizabeth and her reign were at their zenith.
It was the golden age of Elizabethan England. The great houses Elizabeth's courtiers built are a visible, tangible expression of their confidence, exuberance, and wealth.
Unlike her father, King Henry VIII, Elizabeth built no palaces, nothing. She had no need to, because her courtiers and favourites built for her. Sir Christopher Hatton, the Lord Chancellor, already had a great house at Holdenby. But he told Elizabeth he would build another one nearby at Kirby that would be dedicated to her as a shrine to a holy saint. Elizabeth had ceased to be a mere queen, and she'd become instead Gloriana, England's national icon.
She was painted again and again, always dazzling, always glorious, always triumphant. Even in her late 50s, she has the face of eternal youth. But Elizabeth, the woman, was aging. The goddess had feet of clay. Literature flourished as never before. Shakespeare wrote his first plays, some of them commissioned by the Queen. But new theatre brought new and dangerous ideas. One of Shakespeare's plays would soon be used in an attempt to overthrow her. She had ruled for 30 years, loved by her subjects, loyally served by her courtiers. But as she aged, a new generation was growing restless. She would have to fight as never before to hang on to power. It is September 1588. Queen Elizabeth has been locked inside her chamber for some days. All attempts to contact her have failed, and the court is in panic. Despite fears to the contrary, the Queen is alive, but she is not well.
I most humbly beseech your Majesty to pardon your old servant to be thus bold in sending to know how my gracious lady doth. For my own case, I continue still your medicine, and it amends much better than any other thing that hath been given me. With the continuance of my wonted prayer for your Majesty's most happy preservation, I humbly kiss your foot. Your Majesty's most faithful and obedient servant, R. Leicester.
Elizabeth would never receive another of his letters. Robert Dudley, Earl of Leicester, favourite of the Queen, her friend and counsellor for the last 30 years, and the nearest thing she'd ever had to a lover, was dead. In the next 2 years, a succession of court notables followed Robert Dudley to the grave. Sir Francis Walsingham, Secretary of State and Spymaster Extraordinary. Sir Christopher Hatton, Lord Chancellor, builder of Kirby Hall. Ambrose Dudley, Earl of Warwick, brother of Robert. Of the old guard, only William Cecil, Lord Burleigh, remained. The gaps in court and council would have to be filled. But the Queen had always hated change, and instead of bringing in new blood, she replaced fathers with their sons. Robert Devereux, Earl of Essex, was Robert Dudley's stepson. He was 21, vain, high-spirited, impatient and brilliant, with a fondness for duelling. He was much admired at court and was viewed by all as a man destined for greatness. He aspired to his stepfather's role of a great noble and a military leader. Robert Cecil was the second son of Lord Burleigh. He was 25, careful, astute and cunning, with a fondness for corresponding in code. He was mocked, mostly behind his back, for his short stature and his hunched shoulders, but his mind was razor sharp. He aspired to his father's role of statesman and political leader.
Robert Cecil and the Earl of Essex were of the new generation, and the new generation had different ideas from the old. So, Robert Cecil, for example, made a much sharper distinction between the service of the state and the service of the Queen than his father, William, would ever have done. And the Earl of Essex had much more grandiose ideas about the power and the independence of the nobility than his stepfather, Leicester. They were both young men in a hurry, waiting impatiently for the aged Queen to get out of the way. And she knew it.
Essex charmed the Queen, and she was flattered by his youthful attentions. But she was 55, and he was 21. If she loved him, it was partly as her gigolo, partly as her son. He was gifted, but he could also be immature and unruly. Like a strict parent, Elizabeth resisted his demands for a military command. Robert Cecil was already an MP. Elizabeth called him her elf, or, less to his liking, her pygmy. She respected his political instincts, but she was wary of him and was never able to trust him as she had his father. She made him a privy councillor, but she stopped short of giving him his father's old job.